Hello fellow creatives, it is day 15 of the 30 Days of Painted Elephants project and vlog every day in August. And I am celebrating being halfway through this project by giving away a gift. For all of you who entered the giveaway for this print, thank you so much for commenting and entering. The winner is Doris Augustine from Canada. She will be receiving a print in the mail. She actually commented on my Facebook post and she was a lucky number 8 that was drawn. So Doris, look forward to getting that in the mail, and thank you everyone for entering. There may be another giveaway before this project is done, so stay tuned for that. Yesterday was a little bit kamikaze crazy. I started painting all 4 canvases, I whipped them in and out, and I've got a little bit of paint on each one. So the next 3 videos, I'm going to be developing the pieces that I started on. So today's starting point is going to be this piece that I started on yesterday, and I'm going to develop it further. I don't know which way I'm gonna make it start, but it's gonna be my jumping off point. So again, for those that may not have seen yesterday's, I'm doing a series of 4 paintings inspired by Donna Downey's 10 by 10 by 10 class. And I think I figured out what the other 10 is. They were 10 inches by 10 inches square, or the canvas sizes that she chose. So that's what the other 10 was. And watch yesterday's video where I couldn't figure that out. It's kind of funny. So I'm using a limited color palette of yellow ochre, teal, white, raw umber, and Payne's gray. And I'm using some grunge and mixed media techniques, and I'm going to be able to give you all a lot more explanation today in the techniques and processes that I'm doing. Yesterday's footage getting corrupted just totally threw everything out of whack, so I apologize for that. So you can dive into the tutorial on this one today. Before I start, I thought that I would give you a look at the mixed media supplies and mark making supplies that I have compiled. So I have a small piece of cardboard. I have the rubber matting that you put in your cupboards or under your rugs, literally from the dollar store. You buy it in a roll. I have 2 palette knives that are flat because this is the best way to drag paint onto cardboard or the bubble wrap or anything that you want to add paint to that has sort of a raised surface. If you use a paintbrush, you're going to get paint all in the little grooves. So for example, this cardboard. So when I load this up with paint, I just drag the flat edge of the palette knife across it so that I don't get paint all in there, so that when I stamp it, it becomes a very crisp, clear image. And I will walk you through that in the video. I've got different sizes of bubble wrap, which makes a really cool mark. And I have an old, actually it's not old, but the intention of this is actually a hot pot. I got this at the dollar store. The dollar store, by the way, has super good finds. Dollarama in Canada is my favorite art store, to be honest. This is actually a hot pot, but I love the honeycomb pattern that it gives. And once again, if I just drag the paint across here, I don't get it stuck in all of those little tiny grooves, so that when I stamp it onto something, it doesn't become a big blob of something. I have my trusty French script stamp. I have some stencils. And an entire box of ephemera slash letters and letter stickers, some little tags, and I have another box full of things like flowers and wreaths and little butterflies and stick-on birds and things, and you know, little appliques and things. So these are all going to create really cool 3-dimensional mixed media type of applications, or I guess effects. So this stash has been accumulated for like 9 years. So I don't expect anybody's stash to be this big, but if it is, then we are kindred spirits, and you know what I'm talking about. So those are the supplies, and I've got some pattern paper, some book pages. I'm gonna use all of those at my disposal for the next 3 pieces. I'm gonna dive into today. Check it out. So I'm just filling up my paint palette using a magazine cover. If you've heard me before talk about it, this is how I work with my palettes. Adding the Payne's Gray, Raw Umber, White Teal, and Yellow Ochre. Just using the back of my palette knife, dragging some paint along, and see how it makes that very nice crisp mark. That is really key when you're doing mark making. You don't want all of those insides to get all jammed up with paint, because then it just looks blobby. I love alphabet stencils. I wish that they would make them so that they weren't all alphabetical. I wish they would make them with just a jumble of different letters all over the place. This is my trusty Parisian stamp and some raw umber. The raw umber is a high flow liquid acrylic, so it's really watery, like the consistency of milk. So when I stamp it, it's quite runny, but I like that look. One thing to think about when you're stamping is sometimes the canvas will buckle in, so sometimes you need a little book or something to put behind the canvas to make it nice and strong while you're stamping your image. So I decided that there's a bit of a horizon line within the painting since I did it on the first day, so I just figured I would go ahead and establish that. This is a great technique, taking a credit card or a club card and dragging the edge of it into the paint on your palette and then swiping it and creating those really grungy marks. I'm using my old big pencil to write into there since I had a really light background and I put a lot of dense dark paint on top. I was able to scribble in it and then all of the white stuff from underneath still shows up. It is a really, really cool technique, so I highly recommend you give it a try. But the key is to have some pretty dense, like thick, dark paint over top of some white, otherwise it won't show up. So here I'm just using my trusty watercolor pencil to draw in the elephant shape. I do have a reference photo. I literally saw in the paint this shape sort of creeping out from where the paint drops were. And that's what I love about this kind of work, is you can look at the paint as though it's like the Rorschach or whatever test, or if you look up into the clouds and you see a shape. Sometimes when I look at my paintings, that's exactly what happens. I look at all the marks and the drips and the grunge and the mixed media stuff, and I can actually see a form, and then I go and develop it from there. So I did see this sort of profile elephant shape, so I just looked online for exactly that. I Googled profile elephant, and that's what, this is one of the images that showed up. Now I still want to have those translucent layers below, so I'm using the very translucent raw umber paint. So this is a paint that is pretty watery, doesn't have a lot of pigment to it, so that when I use it, it looks like watercolor almost, and I can see all of those juicy layers below. I'm having a really hard time with this trunk here, so I'm working it a little bit. But the beauty of acrylic paint is that you can always paint over it, no matter what. You can always make more juicy layers, you can erase, you can smudge. And that's part of the reason that I love working in a mixed media platform, is because there are no mistakes and everything is cover-upable. So keep that in mind whenever you're working with any of your pieces. And the more that you practice and the more that you paint, the more you will learn not to be so hard on yourself, not to judge yourself, and to know that you just have to keep moving forward. Whether it's going to work out or not, you have to take risks. It is a huge, huge lesson. So I'm just taking, I think at this point this was my number 3 micron pen, and it really just wasn't working for me. It wasn't getting dark enough, so I went in and I deleted or washed out that watercolor pencil to try and get a lot crisper of a mark, and then I moved on to my number 8 micron pen, and that worked a lot better. So I'm mimicking that sketch, you know, that really sketchy mark that I did in the first painting of this series, and just bringing that in here with my raw umber shaded elephant. So you can see there that those lines are a lot darker. I'm not outlining it like a coloring book. I'm doing these really sketchy cross-hatch type of marks. So it doesn't look like it's a coloring book at all. It looks like it's a sketch and a drawing, which was 100% my intention. And I'm always keeping in mind what my other canvas looks like. I do have it off in the background so that I can reference it and look to it and think, okay, does the shape of my elephant mimic, you know, the shape of the ones that I'd previously done? And in fact, it does. There's a sense of whimsy in this piece. So this elephant is very whimsical. She's very gleeful. And here I'm touching up that area that, like I said, everything is cover-upable. So I'm going in here with some white acrylic paint, and look at how doing that just makes that trunk really pop off of the background. So I really wanted that to establish itself. At the same time, I don't want it to look colored in. So I'm going over this now with a very, very watered down yellow ochre, almost like a watercolor, to make it look like I didn't do all of that white paint intentionally. I'm thinking now that this is a great opportunity to add some ephemera or ephemera, however the heck you call it. Again, the character of this elephant is just so happy and go lucky that I felt like she kind of could use some flowers, and thankfully I had these beautiful cardboard flowers in my stash. Them being stark white wasn't going to work, so I just literally grabbed some of the paint on my palette and grunged them up a little bit, not knowing, you know, what's kind of going to happen next, but just knowing that white was not an option. So now they already look a lot more cohesive. They're going to change a lot. Something to note for anybody who's using gel medium, I always use, or our decoupage glue, I always use this same glue brush. You don't want to get a lot of your studio brushes gunked up with glue. So I highly recommend buying a cheap one and using it over and over again. It will get gunked up and you'll throw it out, but then you just replace it with a new one. But don't go and use all of your brushes, no matter, you know, whichever one is at hand, and grab it and use it, because it'll just get ruined. So here, to try and pull everything together, I decided to do some really washed out paint splatters with the teal and the white, and then adding some water spritzes to make them not look so intentional. Again, going for a lot more of that grunge look. I just love adding paint and water and watching it drip, and just in its organic way, and seeing how it will fall. I have this other flower that's got 3 parts to it that I tried to get the top part off, but it was just not happening. So thankfully, in my stash of punches and things from when I was a card making teacher, I have little punches. So I just grabbed cardstock and actually an old scrapbook page, and I just punched an extra flower out of it, and I'm just using it to add to this little one. Now, the reason I did that was because having 2 big flowers was just a little bit too symmetrical, so I needed a third. So if you study anything with regards to art, you know that things draw the eye around the page more so if you have them in thirds. So your eye would bounce back between those 2 flowers if I didn't have a third flower to sort of bring the eye around and have it travel around. Something too, I used my fingers to glue that little guy on, and again, I cannot express enough, protecting your hands with a body glove cream before you work is really, really key. I just dunked my entire finger into the glue and went along with that. So I've added some palette knife painting to the tops of those flowers, and you can see now that they're getting the colors and things that the rest of the painting has, so they're starting to be a lot more cohesive as opposed to before when they were just white. I'm wanting to establish more of a very, very distinct horizon line with this Payne's Gray, so that's what I'm doing there with the credit card. It works really well just in between the little grooves of that flower, and I can't express how important and how fun it is to learn how to utilize a credit card. I use them in many, many different ways in my mixed media work. In fact, maybe I'll have a whole video on how to use a credit card in mixed media because it is a very, very versatile tool. And I felt like I needed to, kind of make everything a little bit more cohesive, and one of the key ways to do that with mixed media work is to use the palette knife and some white paint and just drag it. It just instantly brings everything together. And I felt like I was missing some of the Payne's Gray. I only had it in that one horizon line. It didn't seem to be really anywhere else on the painting, so I decided to grab that honeycomb stamp image and incorporated a lot more so that it looked a lot more cohesive. And these are some of my alphabet stickers, and thankfully they are sort of an orangish yellow ochre color, so I felt like they would be a perfect fit. In the end, I decided to just go with the E, and I painted it with the yellow ochre. And again, I'm just using my fingers, so protect your hands, people. I can't express it enough. Using my finger in the glue, that stuff is not good for you, and so protecting your hands is very, very important. Just using the end of a paintbrush to stick that because my hands are full of glue and paint, and so I needed actually the end of that palette knife to hang on to it and stick it, and that is just Mod Podge glue. Once that dries, I will set it again and go over top of it with more decoupage. And I really loved this scribble look that I did in the first painting. So again, having it in mind how to make these look cohesive, referencing the first painting that I did and doing those little scribbles. Now I wanted to bring this in here because this is yesterday's painting, but I decided to add some elements. So I added the alphabet stamps and that big E. And here I'm just dragging some paint on them and doing very similarly to what I did with the flowers, and just getting some of those same colors from the color palette onto the piece to sort of make them a little bit more cohesive. I just really love dragging my palette knife. I just think that technique is the cat's meow, or like my friend Roxanne Cobble says, thebomb.com. So that's just a little idea of how I finished yesterday's piece. And if you stay tuned to my Instagram stories, I will give you a glimpse of the two of them side by side, and you can see them together. I just love seeing the characters that show up on the canvas. This is one happy, gleeful little elephant. All done. Are you ready to see it? There she is. Very happy little gleeful elephant. There was a lot jammed into today's tutorial lesson. I slowed it down a bit so that I could explain some of the techniques for you. Some of people have commented that it's too fast and that it's not something that they can learn from. So I'm taking those words and I'm applying them. And when I'm doing something that involves a lot of technique and something that people may not know, then I will go ahead and slow it down and walk through the tutorial. So that is day 15 of the 30 Days of Painted Elephants project and vlog every day in August. I am halfway there. That is so exciting to me, and I'm excited that I was able to gift Doris the print of the elephant from the giveaway. What a great way to celebrate is gifting things to others. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the remainder of the 15 elephants that I'm going to paint for throughout the month of August. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at Wholehearted Art. I've got some Instagram stories and the hashtag 30 days of painted elephants. And if you liked the slowed down tutorial of today with all of the juicy instructions, hit that like button. Or if you just liked today's video, thanks for tuning in and I will see you tomorrow.